Hi, welcome to Parametric House. In this Paracourse 2.0 tutorial, I wanted to start a complete new course on Rhino Grasshopper, and we're going to focus on Rhino 8 beta because it's the latest version, as you can see here. And obviously there are going to be some new tools in it, but the most of the parts is going to be similar to Rhino 7 and the Grasshopper we always used. Okay, when you start Rhino 8 beta, you can see that we have a Grasshopper up here, which we can run. Before we start Grasshopper, if you type here package manager, it's going to open the package manager, which you have to be installed. You can also click on the include pre-releases. You can see that there are lots of tools which you can install here easily. But what we want to talk about here is the Grasshopper 2.0, and you just have to hit install and it's going to be installed. When you install the Grasshopper 2 package manager, if you just type here G2 and run it, this is going to open the Grasshopper 2 new version. In the future tutorials, we're going to talk about how we can use that and about some basics of the Grasshopper 2. So stay tuned, but for now I'm going to just dive into Grasshopper 1 because you're more familiar with that. Rhino 8 is also really similar to Rhino 7. We're just going to talk about some new tools we're going to use here. So you can simply just click on Grasshopper and run the Grasshopper version 1, which is installed on Rhino 8 beta, and now I'm just going to double click on perspective to make it bigger. For the future tutorials, what I want to use is a template which I'm going to explain now. One is I usually bring Grasshopper to the right corner up here and make it bigger so it covers the right corner of my screen. And I usually make the commands a little bit smaller like this so I can manage that later. For example, you can just bring out the snap and just simply put it here if you want to use it anyway, and make this a little bit smaller. So I'm going to just use this to make it as simple as possible to work with the Rhino Grasshopper components. Another thing I usually do is to make the perspective, grab it out. It's going to give you a big Rhino viewport, and then I just make it at the corner left and bring it down completely. I also make it a little bit smaller so I have some space for the Rhino tools, and just bring it to the right. And now, as you can see here, I have some commands in Rhino. I have the big Rhino viewport. So for example, if I just draw a rectangle here and I'm just out here, I can use the Control Shift E to go, which is zoom extend, to bring it in. If you want to also have the other tools, you can make this a little bit also smaller, and the Rhino command just you can see the Rhino command tools up here too. You have the Rhino complete viewport here, which is not underneath the canvas. You have the tools up here, you have the tools at the left, and I think this is a good layout for the start. And also bring this Grasshopper a little bit up so you can see this snap, smart track. Maybe you want to turn on the gumball and just control it, so you just can right click here and simply use it. You have the top front right viewport you can click on, but remember, because this is the perspective view, you can't switch between these viewports. You have to close it and just drag it up again. So this is not going to work. You just have to come here and set the view to like top, bottom, left, right, front. As you can see, if I just bring it up here down the layers, it's going to snap and make it maximize. So just bring it a little bit slightly up the default layer, so you can also control the layers and the units if you want to just change the unit settings, and so on. Another thing about the components is that by default it's like this. So remember that you have to change it to display draw icons, because I'm just going to work with the icons. Display full names so you can see the inputs and outputs. This is good for beginners. Also, there is a fancy-ware which is on. Another plugin you can install for the plugins, you can go to File, Special Folders, and Components folder. There's also a User Object folder which is good for like clusters and other tools. So most of the time we're going to go to the Components folder and open it. As you can see here, these files are usually .gha, the files for the components and plugins, but you can make folders inside here. Just simply make a folder and rename it based on your plugin. So maybe the plugin name whatever it is, you can manage it easily and put the plugin inside there. Another thing you can do here is if the plugin doesn't show up, just simply right click here and go to properties, and if there is something called unblock, just hit the unblock and apply, and then restart your Rhino Grasshopper. I think that's the only thing you have to consider. If the plugin has other files like a DLL file or other things, just right click and be sure that all of them are unblocked, and usually that solves the issue. Okay, after restarting the Rhino Grasshopper, you can see that I have all of the plugins installed here, which I can access. Another thing that I want to explain is that if you go to the help and about and click here, you can see that all of the plugins have been installed. It's going to show up here, which you can just hover and see the name. So that's also a way you can see if their plugin is installed and it's running. Another plugin I use usually for the tutorials is Snapping Gecko, which is really cool. If you just select these things, toggle object snap, snap to edges, centers, and anything. As you can see here, if I add a component, a good thing is that it's going to snap it. So for connections, it's also good if you want to arrange your components easily. For showing the names of the components, there are different ways you can do that. One of the components is plugins you can install is display sunglasses. As you can see, if I click here, the name is of the components. Another plugin you can install is the bifocal, which you can see it's like this glasses. If you put it on the canvas, the name is going to be up here. So this is also another way of showing the components at the top. But anyway, if you want to delete it, you can just have to delete the component and it's gone. So just select which one you want to use. You can use the display sunglasses. It has lots of options here like fonts and nicknames and other things, or you can use the bifocals to show it up here. So I'm going to use the sunglasses because it's easy. You can see it's at the top of the component. So for example, if I want to search this, I can just double click here and search brep and use this, and again brep. You can see that I have the components here. So this is also a good way of remembering this as you constantly exercise with the tools. This is really good for searching them and finding them. Also the icons is really helpful because it's going to you can easily remember them and also find them in the components, menus, and submenus. I'm also going to explain how you can find it. Also, if you just open a file, you can use the Control Alt and click to find it. So if I click here, you can see it's going to show you that it's in the surface menu, the freeform submenu, and so on. So for this one, you can see it's here. If I use a tool at the end, maybe use that, you can see it's going to open it and say it's in the intersection and physical clash. So that's also a great way of finding the components if you open a file. And there are new tools added to Grasshopper. So here, for example, this is really interesting. You have a point cloud contour. That's also, I think, added to the vector point. So here you can see that we have this point cloud attributes, closest point and reduce point cloud. So this is also has been added. So in the params menu in geometry, you can see that we have also the point cloud. Another thing about connection is if I just right click here and set multiple points, for example, you can see that the line is going to be with this template. If it's like 1 point, it's going to be a simple line. And if it's like multiple points, managed in a group. So for example, if I right click and graph it, you can see this dotted connection. So remember that whenever you see this one, it means that the outputs are in different groups. So that's also important. So you just have to go and hover here and see what's happening. So that's also a good indicator to check out the data management section. If you see this kind of wire connection, that means there are more than one data inside this, and if it's just one, it's just a simple line. For the connection, remember if you have like Control-C, Control-V, two components, and you want to connect them into an input, use the Shift key to add it, so you can just connect as much as you want. And if you want to disconnect it, you just have to use the Control key and disconnect it. You can just do it either way, whatever you prefer. And also if you want to disconnect it here, you can just right click and disconnect and select the component you want to disconnect here. Another thing you can do is to use the wire display, right click wire display and put it into faint, for example, if you just want to see a faint overview of the connections, and also a hidden, which is going to give you a wireless connection, and whenever you click the connection, it's going to show you here. So that's also a good thing. Another thing you can do here is set one, set multiple. That is the most common for the inputs, set one, set multiple, and manage. So for example, if I didn't have any points here and right click and set multiple, I can select multiple points. It's going to give me a, let's just delete these points, a curve. You can also go to the manage point collection and just select that, and here you can see that you can have the all points here. If you want to add anything, you just have to go here and add an item. It's going to just add a point. If you want to delete it, you can select and delete it. And if you want to edit any of these items, you can just go here and just edit that item. Another good thing is that you can add a path. So for example, I can say that I want to use the control key, shift key to add these two to this group, maybe this one into this group. And now we have a group of the first group is just with 1 point, the second one is also with 1 point, and the third group is with 2 points. So if I just hit OK, you can see that the first and second one, because it's just one, it's not going to give you any output, so it's going to be red. And the third group, because it's 2, it's going to connect. And now you can see that we have this balloon here. If I click it, it says insufficient interpolation points for a curve, which is for the first and the second group. You can also go to the display and canvas widget and turn off the message balloons if you want to just don't see that. Okay. Another thing I want to show you is the profiler, because it's going to help you to understand how much time it's consumed to calculate this component. So if I just go to display and canvas widget and find this profiler and turn it on, you can see that it's like 11 milliseconds. That is because, for example, this has like 100 points inside it. Remember that for the inputs and outputs, you can always just hover and see what's inside it to understand the inputs and outputs. And for example, if I just go to surface and connect this to a sphere, you can see this is also. So if I say I want 20 for the count and change it, it's gone. For the first calculation, it was like 11 milliseconds, and now it's going to change and the profiler is gone. So I just wanted to give you also an overview of the profiler and how it works. If you just right click here, and let's talk about recompute. If you want to recompute the calculations, you can just right click and recompute. If you want to just stop everything, just right click here and lock the solver. You can also use the middle mouse button, which is really great. For example, if I'm zoomed, let's just go here and, for example, move. Give it a vector. I'm going it here. Okay. Assume that we are working here and we want to see this moved geometry. You can select the component and use the middle mouse button and use this one, which is a zoom extend, and it's going to just jump to the component you are selecting. So just click it, middle mouse button, and zoom extend. So this is really great if you want to work with the inputs and outputs and zoom on different components. If you select the component and use the middle mouse button, there are other things you can do. You can turn the preview on or off. And so, for example, if I turn it off, you can't see anything. And if I turn it on, you can. So that's also useful. Another thing you can do is enable and disable. Instead of previewing on and off, you can just disable this component so it's not going to run, and you can enable it to run. And you can also select this and bake it, which is going to bake any output you have, and it's going to put it in the first layer. So now you can see that we have them here, and that's also useful if you want to bake that really fast. Another thing you can do is to lock the solver again. The lock solver is not going to run, so if I just do anything to that, maybe for example explode, and you can see that we don't have any outputs here because we have locked the solver. So if you just right click, you can also turn on the solver again, and it's going to give you the outputs. For the component, you can also go here and group it. So for example, if I select multiple components like this, I can right click here, middle click here, and use the group to make them into group. This is really cool because you can just manage them easily. If you right click here on the group, you can rename it. So the title you want, you can do that here. If you right click here onto the group, you can use the blob outline, which is really simple to use. You can also go to the rectangle outline and the box, which is a bounding box for the components. So assume if I want to remove this from the group, I can select it, right click here and remove from the group. So if I just bring it out, you can see the group is going to be with these two. And if I want to add it, I can select it, right click and add to the group. So that's also useful. If you want to just delete the group, you can say ungroup and the group is going to be deleted. For the colors, you can right click here and change the color if you want to. You can see that there is a transparency you can always use, and also change the color, which is really cool. And make this color default is going to be for any group you make. So if I just select this and make a group, the group color is going to be that one. If you want to select all of the components from a group, you can also right click here and select all, and all of the components is going to be selected, or you can just move the groups easily up and down. That's really useful if you want to work around. There are some tools you can add to your components to work easier. Remember that if you select display and draw full names off, it's going to be more compact. For example, if you don't want to show the inputs and outputs. For future tutorials, because I want to teach you the components, I'm going to use the display full name. But if you are working with this and you are familiar with the components, you know the inputs and outputs, I think that you don't need to turn it on. So remember that you can always turn it off here. Okay, for the groups of components, you can do different things. For example, I can draw something here. And if I select this and right click and send it to Rhino, you can see that we have this in Rhino, and I can just draw something instead of that. For example, I want to use this. You can bring anything from Rhino inside that. Right click and load from Rhino. Remember that the position of this is really important. This is exactly the corner of the canvas. So if I just bring it up here and right click and load from Rhino, select this and right click again, you can see it's up here. So this is actually the top corner of the canvas. The canvas is down in the -y direction. Anyway, you can just refine your drawings easily in Rhino. If you double click here, you can see that you can change the thickness easily. You can select dotted, dashed, and change the color also, and just hit OK. That is also really useful if you want to add it to the group, and just simply add some drawings to this. Another thing you can do here is in the params menu in the utility is to scribble. Maybe you just want to type something, just double click this and some additional info, and you can change the font easily and select whatever you want. So that's also really useful. And hit OK, and just add those information up here. Another thing you can use here is the jump. So if I want to jump from here to this part of the algorithm, I can just add a jump, and when I'm here I can just double click this and move forward and backward. So if you just hit here, another Control C, Control V, it's going to add another tool here. So that is going to be the first, the second, and the last jump. Another thing you can do here is some viewport management, which is really great in Grasshopper. So if I just select here and hit on add named view, I can say step 1. You can also define the zoom. So maybe instead of 239, I want 200% and hit OK. You can see it's like this. And I can't move the canvas anymore. But anyway, if I hit OK, this is going to be the named view step 1. Maybe I just want to zoom in here and name this step 2. Don't change the zoom. And that's it. So for example, if I click the step 1, I can see it here, step 2, and so on and so forth. You can just delete that also. That is really also useful if you want to manage your canvas. View entire document is going to show you all the document. If you select something, you can also go to zoom selected. You can focus on the upper left, you can focus on the upper right, and that's the bounding box of the components, and that's also really great. Zoom on preview is also another thing that if you select here, this is also here, only draw preview geometry for selected objects. So if I only select that object, it's going to be drawn in Rhino. So that's also useful. For example, I just want to see the points. So whenever I select that, it's going to be drawn in Rhino. Whenever I turn this off, you can also right click instead of middle click and turn it off and on with the right click. Remember, that's preview enabled, and bake is also useful here. So for example, if I select this, you can see that the sphere is here. If I want to go to the move, I can just go here to zoom, and remember that instead you can just turn that off if you always want to see the components, and manually turn these off and on. Another thing you can do here is draw the wireframe. So that is similar to the wireframe shaded rendered mode. So you can see that you can go to the shaded or wireframe, and don't draw anything is going to turn off all of the components. Okay, another thing is the preview. So as you can see here, if I select these spheres, when they are not selected they are red, and when they are selected are green. So I can change it here from the preview setting. Each of the normal and selected can be changed here. There are some templates, and you can simply just change the preview here. Another thing here is the low quality, high quality. Maybe for some projects you want to just simply have the highest quality for the Rhino viewport. So you can access the low quality, high quality here. Another thing we can talk about is the display, and here you see the preview point flavor. So for example, if I just go here and right click and set multiple points and bring it here, you can see that the points is going to be displayed with this preview point flavor component. So it's like a cross, you can make it like a point, and you can make it like a dot. So you can change that here. Another thing you can do here is the gumballs. So for the gumballs is you can move the points inside Grasshopper, especially that is if it's internalized, and you can see that I can move them in the X, Y, and Z direction. So the gumball is really a great component if you especially want to move the points around. You can turn it off or on here. Another thing is the preview plane size, which is like by default 4. This is the plane. Let me explain it. For I think a simple rectangle in Grasshopper has a plane. So if I just bring it here, you can see the input for the P, which is plane. Let's go to the full name. You can see that this is shown in also Rhino. You can simply turn it off if you want to see the geometry, but if you want to change the size, you can go to display, preview plane size, maybe 40. You can see how big it is if you want to see the planes. For the inputs, remember that you can also right click and extract the parameter to get a component which you can set. Okay, the only thing left is display preview mesh edges. So for example, let's just delete everything and talk about mesh edges. If I go to mesh and for example primitive, maybe a mesh sphere EX, you can see that we have the base plane. We can extract and turn it off, and you can see it here. For the mesh edges, you can turn them off here, Control M. By Control M, you can turn them off and on, which is really useful. But what is also important here is that you can give some preview geometry to your object. We usually are going to use this in our future tutorials. So if I go to the display and go to preview, I'm going to use this custom preview component, which is really great. To make it as simple as possible, I'm going to just give the custom preview to my geometry, which you can see here. And if I go to the rendered mode, also it gets the material and that color. So if you just turn this off, because you have both the mesh and the custom preview, you can see it here. Again, Control M is not going to work because the mesh is turned off and we just have a custom preview. And again, I can give it a material There are different ways to do that. You can go to preview and create a material, give it to here, diffuse. For this one, I usually use the swatch, the color swatch, and give it to the color here. And to see the shaded, especially in the rendered mode, what you can do here is go down and come here. For the rendered mode, to see the shadows, if I right click here, there is a show panel, which is these panels you can see here. If I click on show panels, as you can see here, we have the display here. Maybe we don't want to use that, but anyway, I'm going to explain it later. But I'm going to also add the panel render here. So if I just scroll down, rendering, and just hit here, so we can go to the rendered mode. Okay, if you scroll down, you can see that there is a ground plane. You can turn it on or off to give it a little bit of a shadow, but to see the shadow you have to turn the sun on, and you can click on sun settings, hit on manual control, and control this manually if you want to give it different directions. And there's also this intensity, so remember that you can always control it manually. And other things, there is also background color solid, which is white. You can change that with a color picker and put it to another color. That is also really useful if you want to have a good view from the rendered mode. But I'm going to put it to white, which is fine. Another thing here I want to explain is about edges. Let me explain this with showing you in the mesh. We have this mesh edge tool, and give it to the mesh so you can see the edges. And if you go to the display, you can do that even in shaded mode or rendered mode, whatever you want. But if you go to the display at corner here and go to edit rendered settings, you can open it up, go to objects, open it up, and go, for example, to curves. So if you want to increase the view for these curves or lines, you can go to curve width usage and put it to pixels and increase the pixels. Here you can see that this is going to change the color, and if you want to, you can also change the color. Okay, but I'm going to use the object's color, and that's it. So that's also going to be useful if you want to change the points, curves, surfaces, sub-D, meshes, and so on. So I'm going to hit the cancel and go back to default. But remember that you can always change it from the display setting. In the future tutorials, we're going to talk about the remote control panels, inputs and outputs. But for now, just to know about the canvas, I want to show you the file and the preferences. So if you click on the preferences, you can change the author, the display, the decimals, the fonts, the interface, the colors for each of these, enabled, disabled, errors, hidden, and so on. So which is really great. The viewport widgets you can add or disable, and for the files where it is saving, if you want to show the recent files, and so on and so forth. But what I usually use is a template file, which is like a watermark I make for the Grasshopper file. Just simply save your file, a Grasshopper file, and you can select it from here. And whenever you make a new file, it's going to add that to the template file. Here in the solver, you can see that the plugins which are installed, you can just disable or enable them. And that's for the preferences. If you want to get a quick image, you can export a quick image from your canvas, and also just add something like this and the Rhino viewport. So you can highlight this part maybe. And for this one, you can just scale and rotate it. I think that you can rotate it also. And we don't need the crop, version code, which you can see it here, and erase custom setting and put it to reset. So remember that you can always use this and save the file. Another thing you can do is to file export high resolution image from the canvas, the zoom you want, the color you want for the background, and hit it on the desktop. For example, I can hit OK and get the output as an image, which is really useful. Okay, I hope this tutorial was useful. In the next tutorial, we're going to talk about inputs and outputs and how we can manage them. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about this Canvas tutorial, just ask below, and see you next time. Bye.